I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore. Those were the exact words my son's fiancée whispered to me the night before their wedding. Her perfect smile never reached her eyes as she leaned in close, making sure no one else could hear. I stood frozen, clutching the scrapbook I'd spent weeks creating a labor of love documenting my son's journey from a giggling toddler to the accomplished man he'd become. The next morning, I made a decision that broke my heart. I stayed home. But by noon, the wedding had completely fallen apart, and the reason why left everyone stunned. My name is Nancy White, and at 55, I've spent more than half my life being underestimated. When you're a cafeteria worker at County General Hospital, people look right through you. They see the hairnet, not the woman who raised a brilliant son single-handedly. They see the serving spoon in my hand, not the calluses earned from working double shifts. For 27 years, I had given everything to raise my boy Anthony. When his father walked out on us without so much as a goodbye note, Anthony was just 7 years old, clutching his favorite dinosaur toy and asking questions I couldn't answer. "When is Dad coming home? Mom?" he'd ask that night, his small voice cracking. I still remember how my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, but I swallowed my tears and pulled him close. "It's just going to be you and me now, buddy," I'd whispered. "But I promise, we're going to be okay." And somehow, through countless sacrifices, no one but me would ever understand. We were. I gave up promotions that would have required relocation. I skipped vacations and learned to stretch every dollar until it nearly tore apart. I mended clothes instead of buying new ones. I took on catering jobs on weekends when Anthony had sleepovers at friends' houses. My hands would be raw from cleaning, my feet swollen from standing all day. But I'd still summon the energy to help Anthony with his homework. Every school project, every science fair, every parent-teacher conference I was there, often still wearing my work uniform. But there, "Mom, you don't have to come to every single game," Anthony told me once in high school, a hint of embarrassment in his voice as his teammates glanced my way. "I know I don't have to," I'd replied, zipping up my worn jacket. "I want to." And when the acceptance letter from law school arrived, the pride I felt was beyond words. The boy who had once cried himself to sleep over an absent father had grown into a determined young man with a bright future. We'd done it together, last Sunday. I sat at my small kitchen table, carefully placing the final touches on the scrapbook I'd been working on for weeks. The morning light filtered through my faded curtains, casting a warm glow over the photos spread before me. "He's really getting married next weekend," I whispered to myself, running my fingertips over a picture of Anthony at his law school graduation. Tall and handsome in his cap and gown, his smile so wide it made my heart swell. For 3 years, I had truly tried to welcome Olivia Chambers into our small family. She was everything Anthony deserved: beautiful, confident, successful in her marketing career. When they first met at a charity gala where she was coordinating and he was representing his law firm, it seemed like fate. At least, that's what Anthony told me. "She's amazing, Mom," he'd gushed during our weekly Sunday dinner, the first time he mentioned her. "Smart, driven. You should see how she commands a room." And I had seen it, when he finally brought her home 3 months later. Olivia was stunning, the kind of woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, with her flawless dark skin, expertly styled hair, and clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. White," she'd said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Anthony talks about you constantly." Her smile was dazzling, her manners impeccable. But when Anthony left the room to take a work call, something shifted. The warmth in her eyes cooled several degrees as she glanced around my modest living room. "This place has character," she'd commented, running a manicured finger over my second-hand bookshelf. "Very unvintage." It was the first hairline crack in her perfect facade. Over the next 3 years, more would appear, but only when Anthony wasn't looking, like last Christmas, when I'd knitted Anthony a scarf in his favorite colors, a tradition I'd maintained since he was a boy. "Oh, how crafty," Olivia had said, her lips curling slightly. "Anthony, honey, Didn't I just order you that cashmere one from Nordstrom? This can be your backup. Or during Anthony's birthday dinner, when I'd baked his favorite chocolate pecan cake from scratch. Anthony's watching his sugar intake now, she'd announced, smoothly moving the cake away before I could serve it. We're both on this amazing cleanse our trainer recommended. Each time, Anthony would give me an apologetic smile but say nothing. And each time, I swallowed my hurt because I wanted him to be happy. Because that's what mothers do. The engagement announcement came last summer. Anthony called me, excitement bubbling in his voice. She said yes. Mom, we're getting married. I forced enthusiasm into my voice, ignoring the slight twinge in my heart. That's wonderful. Honey, I'm so happy for you both. We're thinking next June, he continued. Nothing too big, just family and close friends. I'd be happy to help with whatever you need, I offered, already imagining helping with flower arrangements or address invitations. Thanks, Mom, but Olivia's got it covered. She's amazing at organizing things. And true to his word, Olivia took complete control of the wedding planning. I wasn't invited to a single dress fitting, cake tasting, or venue tour. When I gently asked if I could help with anything, Olivia would give me her practiced smile. Don't worry about a thing, Nancy, she'd say, using my first name despite my never offering it. You just focus on looking nice for the big day. I've got everything under control. The only task I was given was providing Olivia with addresses for my side of the family, all 5 of them, since most had passed away or lost touch after my husband left. As the wedding approached, I focused on creating the scrapbook. If I couldn't be part of the planning, at least I could give them something meaningful. Each evening after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table, carefully arranging photos, ticket stubs, report cards, evidence of a life well loved. He'll appreciate this someday, I told Lisa, my younger sister, when she called to check on me. Even if not right now, Lisa sighed through the phone. Nancy, has it occurred to you that Olivia might be deliberately keeping you at arm's length? She's just busy, I defended, though the thought had crossed my mind more times than I cared to admit. Planning a wedding is stressful. Lisa hummed, unconvinced. And have you met her parents yet? I hadn't. Despite numerous attempts to arrange a meeting, the Chambers family remained elusive. All I knew was that Richard Chambers owned some sort of investment firm, and his wife Eleanor was heavily involved in charity work. They travel a lot, was Anthony's usual explanation. They're really looking forward to meeting you at the rehearsal dinner. The night before I completed the scrapbook, I received a strange call. It was nearly midnight, and the number was blocked. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. Hello? I said cautiously. Is this Nancy White? The female voice was unfamiliar. Yes. Who's calling? Someone who thinks you should know who your future daughter-in-law really is. The voice was hushed, urgent. Look up Chambers Financial Holdings and the SEC investigation from 2020 and ask yourself why they're so interested in your son's career prospects. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat in my darkened kitchen, phone still clutched in my hand, a chill running down my spine. Who would call me with such information? And more importantly, was it true? The next morning, I called my friend Sarah Thompson. We'd been friends since high school, and she now worked as a paralegal at a downtown law firm. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it would be Sarah. SEC investigation, she repeated when I explained the mysterious call. Let me see what I can find out. But Nancy, be careful. If there's something shady going on, you don't want to get caught in the crossfire. I just need to know if Anthony could be in danger, financial or otherwise, I replied, anxiety knotting my stomach. By that afternoon, Sarah had texted me, call me ASAP, found something. Her voice was tight when I called. Nancy, the Chambers family has filed for bankruptcy twice in the last decade. Their investment firm was under investigation for misuse of client funds, though charges were eventually dropped. There are rumors, nothing concrete, that Richard Chambers has significant gambling debts. My blood ran cold. And they're pushing for this marriage. To a promising young lawyer from a respectable firm, Sarah finished. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it looks suspicious. I completed, what should I do with this information? Confront Anthony. He was so in love. Would he even believe me? And what if I was wrong? What if the mysterious caller had ulterior motives? These thoughts swirled in my mind as I drove to the rehearsal dinner venue the following evening. The scrapbook sat on the passenger seat beside me, wrapped in silver paper with a blue ribbon, Anthony's favorite color. The restaurant was upscale, the kind of place I'd never visit on my own. I parked my 15-year-old sedan between gleaming luxury cars and checked my appearance in the rearview mirror. I'd splurged on having my hair done, and my navy blue dress, bought on sale last year and saved for a special occasion, was the nicest thing I owned. "You belong here," I told my reflection, trying to believe it. "You're the mother of the groom." The maitre d' directed me toward a private room at the back of the restaurant. Before I reached it, Olivia appeared in the hallway, elegant in a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my salary. "Nancy," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're early." "I wanted to drop this off before things got busy," I explained, holding out the wrapped scrapbook. "It's for you and Anthony. I made it myself." She barely glanced at the package. Instead, she looked over her shoulder, then leaned in close. The subtle scent of her expensive perfume filled my nostrils as she whispered those words that would change everything. "After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore." I blinked, sure I had misheard. "Excuse me." "You heard me," she continued, her voice low but crystal clear. "You've done your part. You raised Anthony. Tomorrow he becomes my husband, my family, and you're just extra baggage we don't need." My hands tightened around the scrapbook. "Olivia, I don't understand. Let me make it simple," she cut in, her perfectly made-up face inches from mine. "I've tolerated you because Anthony loves you, but love makes people blind. I see you for what you really are, someone who doesn't belong in our future. So do us all a favor, and don't come tomorrow." The cruelty in her voice left me speechless. This wasn't just bridezilla stress or wedding jitters. This was calculated, deliberate. Anthony will understand," she interrupted smoothly. "I'll tell him you weren't feeling well. It's better this way. Trust me, he needs to move forward, not be constantly reminded of his humble beginnings." She glanced distastefully at my dress, then at the handmade gift I still clutched. "You can leave that with the staff. Now I suggest you go home before anyone sees you. Wouldn't want to cause a scene, would we?" With that, she turned and glided back toward the private room, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, the weight of her words crushing my chest. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember climbing the stairs to my apartment or unlocking the door. What I do remember is sitting on the edge of my bed, the still-wrapped scrapbook on my lap, tears blurring my vision. Every picture I'd so carefully arranged, every memory I'd preserved, they suddenly seemed meaningless. If Olivia had her way, I would be erased from Anthony's life, reduced to an occasional obligatory phone call or holiday visit. My phone buzzed with a text from Anthony. "Where are you? Everyone's asking." I couldn't bring myself to respond. What would I say? That his beautiful, accomplished fiancée had just told me I wasn't welcome at their wedding? That she saw me as nothing more than an embarrassment? He wouldn't believe me. Or worse, maybe he would, but would side with her anyway. The thought sent a fresh wave of pain through me. As I sat there, something stirred beneath the heartbreak, a quiet, cold anger. I thought of all the sacrifices I'd made, all the nights I'd gone to bed hungry so Anthony could have a proper dinner, all the times I'd worked through illness because we couldn't afford for me to miss a day's wages. "If I'm not part of this family after tomorrow," I whispered into the darkness of my bedroom, "then tomorrow I won't be there at all." The morning of Anthony's wedding dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through my bedroom curtains. For a moment, disoriented from sleep, I reached for the pale blue dress I'd bought months ago, the one I'd planned to wear as mother of the groom. Then Olivia's words came rushing back, like a knife twisting in my gut. "After tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore." I sat at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold between my trembling hands. My phone had been buzzing since 7 a.m. messages from Lisa, from distant cousins already at the venue, and finally from Anthony himself. "Mom, we're heading to the church. Can't wait to see you there." Tears blurred my vision as I read his text. He had no idea what Olivia had said to me, No idea that his bride-to-be had already cut me out of their future. I should tell him. I should call him right now and tell him everything. But what would that accomplish? He was hours away from what should be the happiest day of his life. Would he even believe me? Or would Olivia spin it as the desperate action of a clingy mother who couldn't let go? By 9 a.m., the messages turned frantic. "Mom, where are you? Everyone's asking. Mom, the ceremony starts in an hour. Please call me. Are you okay? Olivia said you weren't feeling well last night, but I'm really worried." I turned my phone face down on the table, unable to bear it anymore. Every instinct screamed at me to rush to the church, to be there for my son. But the thought of sitting in that pew, smiling politely while he pledged his life to a woman who had already erased me from the picture I couldn't do it, for the first time in 27 years, I was choosing myself over Anthony. At 10 a.m., there was a sharp knock at my door. When I opened it, Lisa stood there in her bridesmaid's dress, her expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "Nancy, what on earth are you doing?" she demanded, brushing past me into the apartment. "Everyone's looking for you. The ceremony starts in an hour." I closed the door slowly, feeling oddly calm despite the storm raging inside me. "I'm not going." Lisa froze, turning to stare at me. "Not going? Are you insane? Your only son is getting married." "He's marrying someone who told me to my face that I'm not part of his family anymore," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "She doesn't want me there. So why should I go?" My sister's anger faltered, replaced by disbelief. "What are you talking about, Last night at the rehearsal dinner, Olivia met me in the hallway, looked me in the eye, and said after the wedding, I'm no longer part of their family. She told me not to come today." Lisa sank onto my couch, speechless. For a long moment, the only sound was the tick of the wall clock. Finally, she whispered, "Oh my God." "I won't sit there like a fool pretending I belong," I continued. "I won't watch my son marry someone who has so little respect for me for the sacrifices I made for him." Lisa pressed her hands over her mouth, torn between anger and pity. "But Nancy, if you don't go, people will blame you. They'll say you abandoned your son on his wedding day." I let out a bitter laugh. "Then let them. I've been judged my whole life." What's one more by 10:45, I watched from my front window as neighbors climbed into their cars, dressed in suits and gowns, heading to the church where my son was about to start a new chapter of his life, one that, according to his bride, wouldn't include me. My car keys sat untouched on the counter. I didn't move. When the church bells began to ring at 11, I sat in silence, staring at the ceiling, imagining the scene unfolding without me. Anthony waiting nervously at the altar, guests whispering about my absence. Olivia, radiant in white, probably relieved that I had taken her advice. That should have been the end of my story. A mother too broken, too humiliated to stand by her son on the most important day of his life. But at 11:47, I remember the exact time because I was staring at the clock. Wondering if the ceremony was over, my phone rang. It was Lisa again. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Nancy," she gasped. "The wedding, it's not happening." My breath caught. "What do you mean it's not happening?" "Olivia, oh God. Nancy, you need to hear this. You need to sit down." And in that moment, as Lisa's trembling voice poured out the unbelievable story, I realized something I never expected. By not showing up, I hadn't ruined the wedding. Olivia had, according to Lisa, at 10:30, half an hour before the ceremony was set to begin. Anthony had been waiting nervously in a small side room of the church. His groomsmen were with him, college friends and colleagues from the law firm trying to calm his nerves with jokes and reassurances. But then Michael Reed, Anthony's best friend since childhood, had burst into the room, face pale, clutching his phone like it was a live grenade. "Anthony," he'd said, his voice breaking, "you need to see this." On the screen was a series of photos, Olivia Anthony's bride-to-be wrapped in the arms of another man. The pictures weren't old. They were from 2 weeks ago, taken at a hotel downtown. "Her neighbor sent these to me," Michael explained, his voice breaking. "He thought you deserved to know before you made the biggest mistake of your life." The man in the photos wasn't a stranger. He was Daniel Parker, Olivia's boss, the marketing executive she'd always described as her mentor. Anthony staggered back, the color draining from his face. In that moment, the truth he'd been refusing to see came crashing down. The late-night strategy meetings, the weekend conferences, the hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room. It all made terrible sense. But it wasn't just the affair. As guests began filing into the church, more revelations spread like wildfire. Jennifer Morris, Olivia's maid of honor, had been drinking champagne since early morning to calm her nerves. Loose-lipped and emotional, she'd let something slip to one of the bridesmaids, who told a groomsman, who told Michael. Olivia hadn't just been unfaithful. She had been scheming. Her family had pushed her into the engagement because Anthony was on the cusp of a lucrative law career. To them, marriage wasn't about love. It was a transaction, a merger. The prenuptial agreement that Olivia had insisted on drafting, claiming it was to protect them both, was actually designed to funnel Anthony's future assets into her control. The final blow came when someone overheard Richard Chambers, Olivia's father, bragging to a business associate in the church vestibule. "Once they're married, our financial troubles will disappear. The boy has a promising future at the firm." By the time Anthony stormed into the bridal suite, he was shaking with rage and betrayal. Olivia, resplendent in her designer gown, turned with a smile that quickly faltered when she saw his expression. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? You're not supposed to see me before." He held up Michael's phone, the damning photos displayed on the screen. "What the hell is this?" Her face went through a rapid succession of emotions. Shock, denial, calculation. That's not what it looks like," she began. "It's exactly what it looks like." Anthony cut her off, his voice breaking. "You and Daniel? 2 weeks ago?" Her bridesmaids gasped. The room went silent. Olivia's voice turned sharp, defensive. "Anthony, listen to me." "No, you listen," he interrupted, his eyes blazing. "It's not just the cheating. It's everything. You told my mother she wasn't part of this family. You tried to cut out the one person who's always been there for me." Olivia's cheeks flushed with fury. "Your mother?" she hissed. "Is that what this is about? She's been poisoning you against me from the start. She's jealous. Anthony. She doesn't want to let go." But the words fell flat. In that moment, Anthony realized the truth that I had been too afraid to tell him I hadn't needed to poison him against Olivia. She had poisoned herself. By 11:15, the church was in chaos. Guests whispered and gasped, checking their phones as the news rippled through the pews. The pastor tried to restore order, but then Anthony walked down the aisle not with a bride, but with a grim announcement. "There will be no wedding today," he declared, his voice shaking but firm. "I've discovered that Olivia has betrayed my trust in ways I cannot forgive. I apologize for the inconvenience, but this ceremony is canceled." Gasps filled the church. Richard and Eleanor Chambers rose in protest, Eleanor's voice rising to a shriek. "Don't you dare humiliate our daughter like this." Anthony didn't flinch. "She humiliated herself." Olivia, furious and desperate, chased after him, screaming about misunderstandings and second chances. But the photos didn't lie. Neither did the whispers about her family's financial motives. By noon, the guests were filing out in stunned silence. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered sympathy for me, though I hadn't even been there. When Lisa finished relaying the story, I sat frozen, the phone pressed to my ear. My heart ached for Anthony, for the humiliation and heartbreak he didn't deserve. But beneath the sorrow, another feeling bloomed. Relief. Vindication. "She wanted me gone," I whispered, almost to myself. "But she's the one who's gone now." The rest of that day passed in a blur. My phone didn't stop buzzing friends, neighbors, distant relatives, all calling with their versions of what happened. Social media exploded with the news, each post more dramatic than the last. I tried calling Anthony, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice breaking. "Anthony, it's Mom. I'm so sorry about what happened. Please call me when you can. I love you." He didn't call back that day, or the next. Instead, 3 days after the wedding, that wasn't. I opened my apartment door to find him standing there, his face haggard, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. I pulled him into my arms without a word, feeling his body shake as he finally allowed himself to break down. We stood in the doorway, holding each other, neither of us speaking. What was there to say eventually? I led him inside and made coffee. We sat at my small kitchen table, the same one where he'd done his homework as a boy. "I should have seen it," he said finally, staring into his mug. All the signs were there. "Love makes us blind sometimes," I replied softly. He looked up, his eyes filled with remorse. "She told you not to come to the wedding, didn't she? That's why you weren't there." I hesitated, then nodded. "How did you know?" "Jennifer told me everything after it all fell apart. How Olivia had been planning to gradually cut you out of our lives. How she thought you were, an embarrassment." His voice cracked on the last word. "Anthony." "I'm so sorry, Mom," he interrupted, reaching for my hand. "I should have protected you. I should have seen what she was doing." "You loved her," I said simply. "You wanted to believe the best of her. The way she treated you." He shook his head, anger flashing in his eyes. "It's unforgivable." We talked for hours that afternoon. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. About Olivia, about her family's financial schemes, about the future. "I've taken a leave of absence from the firm," he told me. "I need some time to clear my head." "Whatever you need," I assured him. "You know I'm here for you." As evening fell, he helped me make dinner just like old times. We moved around my small kitchen in comfortable synchronicity, the familiar routine soothing us both. "I found this in your bedroom," he said later, holding up the still-wrapped scrapbook I'd made. "What is it?" My cheeks warmed. "It's nothing. Just something I made for you and, well, it doesn't matter now." He untied the ribbon carefully, peeling back the silver paper. As he turned the pages, his expression softened, fingers tracing the photographs and mementos of his life. "Mom," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "This is incredible. It was supposed to be a wedding gift," I explained. "A reminder of where you came from." He looked up, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I never forgot where I came from, even if I acted like I did sometimes. When he left that night, things between us felt healed. Not completely, there were still conversations to be had, wounds to be tended. But it was a start. What I didn't know then was that Olivia's humiliation had only fueled her anger, and that anger would soon be directed squarely at me. That should have been the end of Olivia's story in our lives. But when people like her lose everything, they don't go quietly. The morning after Anthony's visit, I was getting ready for my shift at the hospital when my phone pinged with a notification. A friend had tagged me in a social media post. Curious. I opened it and felt my blood run cold. There was Olivia, still in her wedding dress, mascara artfully streaking her cheeks. The caption read, "Some mothers just can't let their sons grow up. Heartbroken that one woman's jealousy ruined what should have been the happiest day of our lives. # toxic milk had heartbroken bride." The comments section overflowed with sympathy for her and condemnation for me, the unnamed but clearly implicated villain of her story. "OMG, that's awful. What kind of mother does that? You deserve better, girl. Some women just can't cut the apron strings. My MIL was the same way. These old ladies need to get their own lives." My hands trembled as I scrolled through the comments. How could they believe this? How could they not see through her lies? But of course, they couldn't. They only knew the story Olivia was telling them, the beautiful, heartbroken bride, victim of a jealous mother-in-law who couldn't bear to see her son happy. I closed the app, feeling sick. This was just the beginning. I realized Olivia was rewriting history, and I was being cast as the villain. By the time I arrived at work, the story had spread. I could feel eyes on me as I moved through the hospital cafeteria, setting up for the breakfast rush. Whispers followed me. Even Dora, my supervisor who'd known me for 15 years, gave me a strange look. "Everything okay?" "Nancy?" she asked during our break. "You seem off." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." I couldn't bring myself to explain what was happening. How do you tell someone that your almost daughter-in-law is publicly smearing you after being caught cheating on your son that evening? Anthony called, his voice tight with anger. "Have you seen what she's posting?" "I saw this morning," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Anthony, people will forget about it soon. It's just social media drama." "It's character assassination," he snapped. "She's painting you as some kind of monster when she's the one who cheated, who tried to use me for money." I sighed, suddenly feeling every one of my 55 years. "What can we do about it?" Responding will only feed the drama. "I'm going to set the record straight," he insisted. "I'm not letting her get away with this." "Anthony, Mom, trust me. I'm a lawyer. I know how to handle this." But neither of us was prepared for how quickly things would escalate. The next day, more posts appeared. Olivia's father shared a lengthy statement about how his daughter had been unjustly abandoned at the altar after months of interference from her fiancé's family. Her mother posted tearful videos about standing by our baby girl in her time of need. Friends I'd never met were sharing stories about how Olivia had always spoken of the difficulties with her future mother-in-law. It was a coordinated campaign, expertly executed. The narrative was clear, poor Olivia, victim of a controlling, jealous mother who'd poisoned her son against his beautiful bride. Anthony did try to counter it. He posted a simple, dignified statement. "I ended my relationship with Olivia Chambers after discovering her infidelity and deception. I ask for privacy during this difficult time." But his understated truth was drowned out by the Chambers family's emotional theatrics. Some of Anthony's friends even questioned his version, swayed by the flood of support for Olivia. "Dude, there must be more to the story," one commented. "Olivia seems devastated." By the end of the week, the online harassment had become unbearable. Anonymous messages flooded my inbox. "You ruined your son's life." "Jealous old hag. No wonder your husband left you." That last one cut deeper than I wanted to admit. How did they know about that? Had Olivia been digging into my past, I tried to ignore it all, to focus on work and give Anthony the support he needed. But then things got worse. Exactly 1 week after the canceled wedding, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. On heavy cream stationery with an embossed letterhead, Chambers and Associates, Financial Advisors. My hands shook as I opened it, already dreading what I might find inside. "Dear Mrs. White," it began in formal, cold language. "This letter serves as notice of our intent to pursue legal action against you for defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with contractual relations." The letter went on for 3 pages, filled with legal jargon and thinly veiled threats. They were claiming that I had deliberately sabotaged the wedding, spread rumors about the Chambers family's finances, and caused Olivia severe emotional trauma. They demanded a public apology, retraction of all defamatory statements, and compensation for damages, including the entire cost of the canceled wedding, a sum that made my head spin. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands, fear closing like a fist around my throat. I didn't have money for lawyers. I didn't have savings to pay the kind of damages they were threatening. In a panic, I called Sarah Thompson. We'd been friends since high school, and she'd worked at Harrison and Bloom law offices downtown for almost 20 years. "I need your help," I said as soon as she answered, not bothering with pleasantries. "I just got a letter from Olivia's family, threatening to sue me." "Sue you for what?" The shock in her voice was evident. "Everything. Defamation. Emotional distress. Something called interference with contractual relations." "Sarah, I don't even know what that means." "It means they're grasping at straws," she said firmly. "Bring the letter to my office tomorrow. I'll take a look." The next morning, I sat across from Sarah in her modest office as she reviewed the letter, her expression growing increasingly incredulous. "This is intimidation, plain and simple," she said finally, setting the pages down. "Interference with contractual relations is just legal jargon for saying you prevented a contract in this case, the marriage from being fulfilled. It's hardly applicable here. especially since Anthony was the one who called off the wedding after discovering Olivia's infidelity. So they can't actually sue me. Hope flickered in my chest. Sarah hesitated. They can try. Anyone can file a lawsuit. But winning? That's another matter entirely. She tapped the letter thoughtfully. What's interesting is why they're coming after you instead of Anthony. He's the one who publicly ended things. Because they know he has legal training, I suggested. And they think I'm an easier target. Possibly. Sarah was still frowning at the letter. Nancy, did you know the Chambers family is essentially bankrupt? I blinked. What? She nodded. I did some digging after you mentioned the SEC investigation. Richard Chambers lost millions in failed investments over the last 5 years. They've been keeping up appearances, but financially, they're on the brink of collapse. A cold realization washed over me. So the marriage to Anthony was their golden ticket, Sarah confirmed. A promising young lawyer at a prestigious firm, with a career trajectory that would have provided significant financial stability. And the prenup Olivia insisted on. Let me guess heavily weighted in her favor. I nodded, remembering what Anthony had told me about the document he'd initially skimmed but never thoroughly reviewed. According to Anthony, there were clauses about shared assets that seemed odd, but Olivia insisted it was standard. Sarah's expression hardened. Nancy, this isn't just about a cheating fiancé. This was a calculated financial move. They needed Anthony's income and future earnings to stabilize their finances. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Olivia's eagerness to marry, her family's elusive nature, the way she'd tried to isolate Anthony from me, the one person who might have noticed something was wrong. What do I do now? I asked, fear replaced by a slow-burning anger. Nothing, Sarah advised. Don't respond to the letter. Don't engage with their social media campaign. Document everything, but stay quiet. They're trying to provoke you into saying or doing something they can use against you. I followed her advice, difficult as it was. For the next few days, I went to work, came home, and tried to ignore the continuing online attacks. Anthony was struggling too torn between anger at Olivia's betrayal and the lingering pain of lost dreams. Maybe I should just issue a statement, he said during one of our phone calls. Tell everyone exactly what happened. And give them more ammunition, I cautioned. Sarah thinks we should lay low, let it blow over. He sighed, frustration evident. I hate that they're dragging your name through the mud. Mom, you don't deserve this. I've weathered worse, I assured him, though in truth the constant stress was taking its toll. I'd lost weight, wasn't sleeping well, and jumped every time my phone chimed with a notification. Then, exactly 10 days after receiving the first letter, Anthony showed up at my door unannounced, his face pale, holding a letter of his own. They're threatening me too, Mom, he said quietly as he sank onto my couch. Richard Chambers says if I don't publicly clear Olivia's name, he'll make good on his threat to sue you. He says he'll ruin you financially. I sat across from him, heart pounding. What did you tell him? Anthony's jaw tightened. I told him to go to hell, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He was fresh out of law school, still paying off student loans, his career just beginning. A lawsuit, even a frivolous one, could damage his professional reputation before it was fully established. He knows I can defend myself, Anthony continued, running a hand through his hair. But he thinks you're vulnerable. That's why they're focusing on you. I reached across the coffee table and took his hand. We'll get through this, I promised, though I wasn't entirely sure how. That night, unable to sleep, I sat in my darkened living room, thinking about something Olivia had said to me months ago, during one of her subtle put-downs. You don't understand how the world works, Nancy, she'd said with that condescending smile. Perception is everything. People believe what they see, what they're told. Reality is flexible. She was right about one thing perception mattered. Right now, the Chambers family was controlling the narrative, painting themselves as victims and me as the villain. But what if I changed that perception the next morning? I called Sarah again. I need everything you can find on the Chambers family's finances, I told her. Court records, bankruptcy filings, The SEC investigation, everything. Nancy, what are you planning? The concern in her voice was evident. Knowledge is power, I replied simply. And I'm tired of feeling powerless. Over the next few days, with Sarah's help, I built a file of my own. Bankruptcy court documents showing the Chambers family had filed twice in the last decade. News articles about investors who'd lost money in Richard's failed ventures. A copy of the prenuptial agreement Anthony had finally read thoroughly, with clauses so predatory they'd make any family court judge raise an eyebrow. Most damning of all was a financial disclosure form from a lawsuit 3 years prior, showing the Chambers family was leveraged to the hilt, with multiple mortgages on their supposedly impressive home and credit card debt in the high 6 figures. They weren't just after Anthony's current income. They needed his future earnings, the partnership he was on track for, the eventual high-profile clients to bail out their sinking financial ship. No wonder they were fighting so hard to control the narrative. No wonder they were threatening me. If the truth about their motivations came out, their carefully cultivated image would crumble. Armed with this knowledge, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: strength. They might have money or the appearance of it, social connections, and a talent for manipulation. But I had the truth, and soon, everyone would know it. For days after the Chambers family's national television appearance, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters seeking comments. Old friends offering support or, in some cases, judgment. Even strangers who had somehow obtained my number, calling to share their own stories of toxic in-laws or wedding disasters. I stopped answering unknown numbers altogether, retreating further into the cocoon of my small apartment, venturing out only for work and essential errands. The stares and whispers at the hospital cafeteria had intensified, some sympathetic, others suspicious. It was exhausting being the center of attention when all I'd ever wanted was a quiet life. "This will blow over," Sarah assured me during one of our now regular strategy sessions in her office. "The news cycle moves quickly. They'll find some other drama to focus on soon. But while the general public's interest might fade, the Chambers family's vendetta showed no signs of abating. Their lawsuit proceeded, with their attorney filing a response to our motion to dismiss that was filled with even more outlandish claims that I had hired a private investigator to follow Olivia, that I had threatened her physically at the rehearsal dinner, that I had a documented history of interfering in Anthony's relationships. "They're getting desperate," Sarah noted as we reviewed the filing together. "These claims are increasingly preposterous and completely unsupported. The judge will see right through this." I wanted to believe her, but the stress was taking its toll. I'd lost weight, developed insomnia, and started experiencing anxiety attacks, something I'd never dealt with before, even during the darkest days after Anthony's father left. Anthony was suffering too. The bar complaint filed by Richard Chambers, while baseless, required him to prepare a formal response and meet with the ethics committee. His firm had placed him on a special project that kept him out of client meetings, a thinly veiled attempt to minimize his visibility until the scandal blew over. "It's not fair," I lamented during one of our Sunday dinners, watching him push food around his plate without eating. "You did nothing wrong. If anything, you're the victim in all this." "Life isn't fair, Mom," he replied with a weary smile. "You taught me that. Remember after Dad left?" I did remember. It was one of the hardest lessons I'd had to teach my young son, that sometimes bad things happen to good people, and all we can do is pick ourselves up and keep going. But this was different. The Chambers family wasn't just a bad thing happening to us. They were actively, maliciously trying to destroy us, and I was tired of being on the defensive. The turning point came unexpectedly, through a wrong number. I answered my phone without checking the caller ID, assuming it was Anthony or Sarah. "Mrs. White." The woman's voice was unfamiliar. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Who's calling?" "My name is Rachel Parker. You don't know me, but I used to work for Chambers Financial Holdings." My heart skipped a beat. "I'm listening." "I saw the interview on American Morning," she continued, her voice lowering as if afraid of being overheard. "What they're saying about you, it's not right. Richard Chambers has a pattern of blaming others for his failures. You worked with him." I grabbed a pen, suddenly alert. I was his executive assistant for 3 years, until 2021. Until he fired me for disloyalty when I questioned some of his financial practices. Her bitterness was palpable. "I've been following your case and, well, I might have information that could help you." We arranged to meet the following day at a quiet cafe across town. I called Sarah immediately after, my pulse racing with a mix of hope and wariness. "It could be a trap," she cautioned. "The Chambers could be trying to get you to say something they can use against you. Or it could be exactly what we need," I countered. "Someone who knows their true nature, who might have evidence." Sarah insisted on accompanying me to the meeting. "At the very least, I can act as a witness if this goes sideways." The cafe was nearly empty when we arrived the next afternoon. Rachel Parker was already seated in a corner booth, a leather portfolio on the table before her. She was younger than I'd expected, early 30s, with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor that contrasted with her nervous finger-tapping. After introductions and cautious small talk, Rachel got to the point. "I kept documentation," she said, opening the portfolio. "Emails, financial records, notes from meetings. I knew someday Richard would try to come after me like he's coming after you." She spread several papers on the table, pointing to highlighted sections. "Richard has been functionally insolvent for at least 5 years. He keeps up appearances by taking from new investors to pay old ones, basically a Ponzi scheme, though he's careful to maintain just enough legitimacy to avoid prosecution." Sarah examined the documents with a practiced eye. "This is substantial. But why are you sharing this now?" Rachel's expression hardened. "Because what they're doing to Mrs. White is what they did to me and to at least 3 other employees who questioned Richard's methods. He destroys people who threaten his image, his facade of success." She turned to me. "When I saw you on TV, or rather, saw how they portrayed you, I recognized the pattern." "What happened to you?" I asked softly. "After I was fired, Richard spread rumors in the financial industry that I had stolen confidential information, that I was unstable, vindictive. I couldn't get another job in finance. I had to move to a different state and switch careers entirely." Her voice cracked slightly. "I didn't fight back then. I regret that now." She pushed the portfolio toward us. "Take these. Use them. I've made peace with my new life. But maybe you can stop them from doing this to someone else." After Rachel left, Sarah and I remained in the booth, poring over the documents. They painted a damning picture of Richard Chambers' business practices, the financial manipulation, the intimidation of employees, the systematic covering up of losses. "This changes everything," Sarah said, carefully organizing the papers. "With this evidence, we can not only strengthen our defense, but potentially turn the tables entirely." "How so?" I asked. "We amend our countersuit to include allegations of a pattern of retaliatory behavior. We demonstrate that what they're doing to you is consistent with how Richard has treated others who threatened his carefully constructed image." Her eyes gleamed with the excitement of a strong legal strategy taking shape. "And we depose Daniel Parker, Olivia's boss, the one she was having the affair with." Sarah nodded. "If he confirms the affair under oath, it destroys their claim that the photos were innocent or manipulated. And given that he's also apparently a business associate of Richard's, he might have further information about their financial schemes." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. We weren't just defending ourselves anymore. We were fighting back. But my optimism was tempered by caution. The Chambers family won't just roll over. They'll fight harder when cornered. "Probably," Sarah agreed. "But now we have ammunition." I left our meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. That evening, when Anthony called to check in, I shared what we'd learned from Rachel Parker. "This is huge, Mom," he said, his voice more animated than I'd heard in weeks. "With this evidence, we can completely discredit their claims." "Sarah thinks so too," I replied. "She's already working on amending our countersuit." There was a pause. Then Anthony asked, "Have you thought about what happens after we win, after all this is over?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on surviving the immediate threat that I hadn't considered what victory might look like. "I just want my life back," I said finally. "I want to go to work without people whispering behind my back. I want to sleep through the night without anxiety. I want you to have the career you've worked so hard for." "And that's it," he pressed. "Just back to normal." "Isn't that enough?" "Maybe," he said thoughtfully. Or maybe there's a reason all this happened. Maybe it's an opportunity for something better than normal. His words stayed with me long after we hung up. Was there a purpose to this ordeal beyond simply weathering it? Could this nightmare somehow lead to something positive? The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Anthony was right. I didn't just want to survive this. I wanted to emerge stronger. And that meant taking control of the narrative once and for all. I called Sarah with a new idea. I want to talk to Jennifer Morris, Olivia's former maid of honor. Sarah sounded surprised. Why? She's already spoken out online contradicting the Chambers' story. If she'd be willing to go on record, to sign an affidavit confirming what she knows about Olivia's affair and the family's financial motives, it would be powerful, Sarah agreed. But approaching her directly could be seen as witness tampering. Then we do it properly, through official channels. We subpoena her for a deposition. Same with Daniel Parker. And anyone else who knows the truth. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You're suggesting we go on the offensive. I'm suggesting we stop letting them control the story, I replied firmly. It's time the truth came out, all of it. Over the next week, a flurry of legal activity ensued. Sarah filed an amended countersuit with the evidence from Rachel Parker. She issued subpoenas for depositions from Jennifer Morris, Daniel Parker, and 2 former employees of Chambers Financial Holdings who Rachel had suggested might have relevant information. The Chambers attorney responded with predictable outrage, filing motions to quash the subpoenas and for a protective order to prevent the financial documents from being entered into evidence. But the judge, apparently growing weary of the increasingly dramatic legal maneuvering, denied most of their motions. The court finds these witnesses and documents potentially relevant to the defendant's claims. The ruling stated, "The depositions will proceed as scheduled." It was our first clear victory, and it sent shockwaves through the Chambers camp. Richard's attorney called Sarah, suddenly interested in exploring settlement options, a dramatic shift from their previous scorched earth approach. "They're running scared," Sarah reported after the call. "They know once these depositions happen, once their financial situation and Olivia's affair are officially on record, their lawsuit falls apart." "What kind of settlement are they offering?" I asked. "They'll drop the lawsuit if we sign a non-disclosure agreement and issue a joint statement saying it was all a regrettable misunderstanding." Sarah's tone made her opinion of this offer clear. "And our countersuit, we'd have to drop that too, of course." I considered the option. A settlement would end this nightmare quickly. No more legal fees, no more public scrutiny, no more stress keeping me awake at night. We could all move on with our lives, but it would also mean the truth would never fully come out. The Chambers family would preserve their facade, free to potentially victimize others as they had Rachel Parker, and as they had tried to do to Anthony. "No," I said finally. "No settlement. We see this through?" Sarah smiled as if she'd expected my answer. "I was hoping you'd say that." The first deposition was scheduled for the following Monday. Jennifer Morris, who had initially posted online supporting our version of events but had gone quiet in recent weeks. We were uncertain whether she would be hostile or helpful when put under oath. The morning of the deposition, I paced my apartment, too anxious to sit still. Though I wouldn't be present, only the attorneys, the witness, and a court reporter would attend. The outcome could significantly impact our case. Sarah called just after noon, her voice triumphant. Jennifer Morris was a goldmine. "She testified about the affair?" I asked eagerly. "That and so much more. She confirmed Olivia explicitly told her the marriage was partly a financial arrangement. She testified about overhearing Richard Chambers discussing how Anthony's career would solve their liquidity problems. And most damning of all, she confirmed Olivia told her about instructing you not to come to the wedding." Relief washed over me. Finally, someone else was corroborating my account. "There's more," Sarah continued. "After the deposition, Jennifer approached me privately. She has text messages from Olivia from the morning of the wedding, complaining that you weren't answering your phone and she was worried you might cause a scene, despite her warning. She kept those texts all this time. Apparently, she had a feeling they might be important someday. She's going to forward them to me this afternoon." The momentum continued to build in our favor over the next 2 weeks. Daniel Parker, faced with a subpoena and the threat of perjury charges, admitted under oath to a brief romantic entanglement with Olivia. He also confirmed Richard Chambers had approached him about potential business partnerships contingent on Olivia and Anthony's marriage. The former employees corroborated Rachel Parker's accounts of financial mismanagement and Richard's pattern of retaliatory behavior against anyone who questioned his methods. With each deposition, the Chambers case crumbled further. Their attorney made increasingly desperate motions to exclude testimony, to seal records, to delay proceedings, anything to stem the tide of damaging revelations. But the truth, once it started flowing, couldn't be contained. And as more details emerged about the Chambers family's deception, public opinion began to shift. Comments on news articles about the case showed growing skepticism about their claims. Social media posts supporting Olivia's version of events dwindled, replaced by questions about her credibility. The most unexpected development came from an unlikely source. A producer from American Morning, the same show that had featured the Chambers family's tearful interview, contacted Sarah. "They're interested in doing a follow-up segment," she told me, excitement evident in her voice. "They've been following the depositions and court filings, and they want to tell the other side of the story." My immediate instinct was to decline. The thought of putting myself on national television, exposing my private pain to millions of viewers, made my stomach churn. "I can't," I said, shaking my head. I'm not made for that kind of exposure." "You don't have to decide right away," Sarah advised. "Think about it. This could be a powerful opportunity to set the record straight, to tell your story in your own words." I promised to consider it, though I was nearly certain my answer would remain no. That evening, I mentioned the offer to Anthony during our daily check-in call. To my surprise, he was strongly in favor. "Mom, this is exactly what we need. The Chambers used that platform to spread lies about you. Using the same platform to tell the truth, there's a poetry to that." "I'm not a public speaker," I protested. "I'm not polished like them. I'll come across as, I don't know, less believable." "That's exactly why you should do it," he countered. "You're authentic. You don't need to be polished because you're telling the truth." His confidence in me was touching, but the fear of public scrutiny remained overwhelming. "I'll think about it," I promised, just as I had with Sarah. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself drawn to the scrapbook I'd created for Anthony and Olivia, the one I'd been carrying the night she told me I wasn't part of their family. I'd kept it wrapped in its silver paper, tucked away in my closet, a painful reminder of hopes destroyed. With trembling fingers, I unwrapped it, allowing myself to look through the pages for the first time since that terrible night. Each photograph, each memento told a story of love and sacrifice. Anthony's first day of school, his gap-toothed smile betraying a mix of excitement and anxiety. His high school graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with pride. The acceptance letter to law school, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. It was the story of my life's greatest achievement, raising a good man despite overwhelming odds. And the Chambers family had tried to erase that story, to rewrite it with me as the villain. In that moment, something shifted within me. This wasn't just about defending myself against their lawsuit anymore. It was about standing up for the truth of who I was. A mother who had given everything for her child, who had faced countless hardships with dignity and perseverance, who deserved to be seen for who she truly was. The next morning, I called Sarah. "I'll do the interview," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "But on one condition, I want to bring the scrapbook." The studio lights were hotter than I'd expected, making me grateful for Sarah's advice to wear a light blouse beneath my navy blazer. We had arrived at the American Morning studio 2 hours early for hair and makeup, an entirely new experience for someone who usually considered lip balm a sufficient beauty routine. "You look great," the makeup artist assured me, stepping back to assess her work. "Natural but polished." The woman in the mirror was a slightly enhanced version of myself, my silver-streaked hair styled in soft waves, my eyes subtly defined, my usual pallor warmed with a touch of blush. I looked confident, which was the opposite of how I felt inside. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, reading my expression as we waited in the green room. Terrified, I admitted. What if I freeze up? What if I say the wrong thing? Just tell the truth, she advised, squeezing my hand. That's all you need to do. The scrapbook sat on my lap, its weight somehow reassuring. We had discussed its role in the interview with the producer beforehand. They were intrigued by the visual element it would bring to the story. Mrs. White, we're ready for you. The set was smaller than it appeared on television, but no less intimidating. 2 comfortable-looking chairs were arranged on a platform, with the American Morning logo displayed on screens behind them. Karina Walsh, the show's host, rose to greet me with practiced warmth. Thank you for joining us, Mrs. White, she said, shaking my hand. I know this couldn't have been an easy decision. Please, call me Nancy, I replied, my mouth dry. As a production assistant clipped a microphone to my blazer, Karina leaned in, lowering her voice. Just between us, I thought something was off about the Chambers story when we interviewed them. Too polished, too perfect, she winked. I'm looking forward to hearing your side. Her candor surprised me, easing some of my tension. Maybe she wasn't just looking for dramatic content. Maybe she genuinely wanted to uncover the truth. 2 minutes to air, someone called. Karina took her seat, motioning for me to do the same. We'll start with a brief recap of the situation, then dive into your experience. Just be yourself. If you need a moment, just say so. We can always edit. Before I could respond, a countdown began, and suddenly we were live. Karina turned to the camera, her expression serious. 3 months ago, American Morning brought you the story of Olivia Chambers, a bride who claimed her wedding was ruined by her fiancé's interfering mother. Today, we hear from that mother, Nancy White, who has a very different story to tell. Nancy, thank you for being here. The camera swiveled to me, and for a terrifying moment, I forgot everything I had planned to say. But then I looked down at the scrapbook in my lap and found my voice. Thank you for having me, Karina. I've been reluctant to speak publicly about this painful situation, but I believe it's important for people to hear the truth. Let's start at the beginning, Karina suggested. Your son Anthony and Olivia Chambers were engaged to be married. What was your relationship with Olivia like before the wedding was called off? I took a deep breath. I tried very hard to welcome Olivia into our family. Anthony seemed happy, and that's all I've ever wanted for him. But looking back, there were signs that Olivia viewed me as an obstacle rather than family. What kind of signs? I described the subtle dismissals, the exclusion from wedding planning, the condescending comments about my home, my clothes, my job, small things individually, but collectively forming a pattern of disrespect. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, Olivia took me aside and told me, quite explicitly, that after the wedding I would no longer be part of their family. She told me not to come to the ceremony. Karina's eyebrows rose. She actually told you not to attend your own son's wedding. Yes, her exact words were, after tomorrow, you're not part of this family anymore. The memory still stung, but my voice remained steady. She said I'd done my part raising Anthony, but now I was just extra baggage they didn't need. That's a devastating thing to hear, Karina said, genuine sympathy in her voice. What did you do? I went home, heartbroken, and the next morning, I made the difficult decision not to attend the wedding. I couldn't bear to sit there, pretending everything was fine, knowing that the bride saw me as disposable. But the wedding never happened, Karina prompted. No, Anthony discovered that Olivia had been unfaithful with her boss. He also learned that the prenuptial agreement she'd insisted on contained clauses that would have given her control over much of his future earnings, something he hadn't fully understood when he signed it. And you had nothing to do with these discoveries. Nothing at all. I wasn't even at the church. I only learned what happened when my sister called me from the venue. We moved through the chronology of events, the aftermath of the canceled wedding, the Chambers family's social media campaign against me, the lawsuit, and most recently, the depositions that had revealed the truth about their financial motivations and Olivia's affair. Throughout, I remained calm, factual, resisting the urge to express anger or resentment despite the unfairness of what had happened. This wasn't about painting the Chambers as villains. It was about establishing the truth. Halfway through the interview, Karina gestured to the scrapbook I'd been holding. You brought something with you today. I nodded, opening the carefully crafted album. This is what I was bringing to Olivia the night she told me not to come to the wedding. It's a scrapbook of Anthony's life from his first steps to his law school graduation. I wanted her to see the man he had become, to understand the journey we had taken together. The camera zoomed in as I turned pages, showing photographs of Anthony growing up playing baseball, opening Christmas presents, studying at his desk, always with that bright, determined smile that had gotten us through the hardest times. I raised Anthony alone after his father left when he was 7, I explained, my voice softening with the memory. There were many difficult years working double shifts, stretching every dollar, making sacrifices neither of us talk about much anymore. But we got through it together. I pointed to a photo of Anthony in his cap and gown at his law school graduation, his arm around my shoulders. This was the proudest day of my life, not because he had achieved something impressive, though he had, but because he had become a man of integrity, compassion, and determination. A man who stands up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. The Chambers family has tried to portray me as a controlling, jealous mother who couldn't let go. But the truth is, I've spent my entire life helping Anthony become independent, capable, strong enough to make his own choices, including the choice to walk away from a relationship that wasn't built on honesty or love. Karina was quiet for a moment, visibly moved. Nancy, the Chambers family has painted a very different picture of you in the media and in their lawsuit. How has that affected you? It's been devastating, I admitted. I've been called horrible names by strangers online. My colleagues look at me differently. I've had trouble sleeping, eating, the stress of being falsely accused, of watching my son's career threatened because he stood by me. My voice broke slightly. It's been the hardest thing I've ever faced. And yet you're fighting back, Karina observed. I have to, not just for myself, but because the truth matters. And because I've learned that the Chambers family has done this before, destroyed people's reputations when they posed a threat to their carefully constructed image. Former employees who questioned Richard's business practices, associates who discovered their financial problems. They use intimidation and legal threats to silence people. Like the lawsuit they filed against you. Exactly. They're seeking $750,000 in damages, a sum I could never pay on my salary. They know that. The point isn't to win in court, it's to bankrupt me with legal fees or frighten me into silence. But it hasn't worked, Karina noted. A small smile crossed my lips. No, it hasn't, because the truth is more powerful than their threats or their money or their social connections, and the truth is coming out, piece by piece, in those depositions. As the interview wound down, Karina asked one final question. What do you want people to take away from your story? Nancy? I considered this carefully. I want people to understand that appearances can be deceiving. The Chambers family, with their wealth and social standing, appeared to be the victims in this situation. I, a cafeteria worker with no connections or resources, appeared to be the villain. But the reality was exactly the opposite. I closed the scrapbook gently. I also want people to know that it's worth standing up for yourself, even when it seems impossible, even when the odds are stacked against you. Because living with a lie is ultimately more damaging than facing a difficult truth. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Nancy, Karina said warmly as the segment concluded. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, she leaned over and squeezed my hand. That was powerful. Truly. I think a lot of people are going to see this situation very differently after hearing from you. Relief washed over me as the microphone was unclipped from my blazer. I had done it, spoken my truth to millions of viewers, without breaking down, without resorting to anger or bitterness. Whatever happened next, I had reclaimed my voice. Sarah was beaming when I rejoined her in the green room. You were magnificent, she declared, hugging me tightly. Clear, genuine, compelling, exactly what we needed. My phone was already buzzing with messages from Lisa, from colleagues at the hospital, from Anthony, who had watched the broadcast live. Mom, you were amazing, his text read. So proud of you. Call me as soon as you can. The producer approached us as we gathered our things to leave. That interview is going to get a lot of attention, she predicted. We've already been contacted by other networks wanting to speak with you. The thought of more interviews, more public exposure, made me uneasy. I've said what I needed to say, I told her. I'm not looking to become a media personality. Fair enough, she replied with an understanding nod. But you should know what you shared today is going to help a lot of people who've been in similar situations. Sometimes putting a face to an experience makes others feel less alone. I hadn't considered that aspect, that my personal ordeal might have meaning beyond my own vindication. It was a comforting thought. As Sarah drove me home, I felt lighter than I had in months, as if speaking my truth had physically lifted a weight from my shoulders. Whatever the Chambers family did next, I had taken back control of my own story. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly that story would spread, or how dramatically the public response would shift. By that evening, clips from my interview were circulating widely online, accompanied by supportive comments. This woman raised her son alone while working in a cafeteria. The Chambers family tried to destroy her for not fitting their image. Disgusting. The way she talked about her son. That's what real love looks like. Not whatever game Olivia was playing. I believe Nancy. There's an authenticity there you can't fake. The following morning, Sarah called with news that made my head spin. The Chambers attorney reached out. They want to discuss settlement options again, but this time, they're willing to drop all their claims with no conditions, no NDA, no joint statement, nothing. They just want this to go away. What about our countersuit? I asked, surprised by the sudden capitulation. They're asking us to drop it as well, of course. But Nancy, this is a complete reversal from their previous position. They're running scared. I considered the offer. A clean break would be tempting. No more legal battles, no more stress, just a return to normal life. But something held me back. What about Rachel Parker? I asked. And the other employees they've intimidated if we settle. What happens to them? Sarah sighed. Legally, nothing changes for them. Our case doesn't directly affect their situations. But it could set a precedent, right? Show that the Chambers family can be held accountable. Potentially, yes. But Nancy, continuing this fight will be expensive, exhausting. And there's no guarantee of victory. The Chambers still have resources and connections. I can't promise you'll get the justice you deserve. I closed my eyes, weighing the options. The safe choice was clear: take the settlement, walk away, rebuild my life. But when had I ever taken the safe choice? Not when I decided to raise Anthony alone. Not when I worked multiple jobs to put him through school. Not when I stood up to Olivia's attempt to cut me out of his life. No settlement, I said finally. We see this through to the end. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Are you sure this could drag on for months? I'm sure, I replied, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. Some things are worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes. The weeks following my television interview passed in a blur of legal activity. The Chambers family, having failed to intimidate me into silence or settlement, shifted tactics yet again this time, attempting to delay proceedings through procedural maneuvers. Their attorney filed motion after motion to change venue, to disqualify the judge, to exclude certain evidence, each requiring a response from Sarah and pushing back the potential trial date. It's a war of attrition, Sarah explained during one of our strategy sessions. They're hoping to exhaust our resources and patience, but their delaying tactics had an unintended consequence. Each motion, each filing became public record, and journalists covering the case began noticing the pattern. A legal columnist for the city newspaper wrote a scathing analysis titled, "Justice Delayed: How Wealthy Litigants Game the System," using our case as its central example. Meanwhile, my interview had struck a chord with viewers. Letters and emails poured in from people sharing their own stories of family conflicts, manipulative in-laws, and battles against those with greater resources. Many offered support. Some even wanted to contribute to my legal defense fund, an idea I politely declined, uncomfortable with accepting money from strangers despite my financial strain. Most surprisingly, several former clients and associates of Richard Chambers reached out, offering testimony about their own negative experiences. The trickle of evidence against the Chambers family was becoming a flood. Anthony, who had been placed on the special project at his firm to keep him out of the spotlight, found his professional situation improving as well. The bar complaint filed by Richard Chambers was dismissed as without merit, following a brief investigation. Several partners at the firm, previously hesitant to be associated with the scandal, now made a point of including him in important meetings. "The tide is turning, Mom," he told me during our Sunday dinner, looking more relaxed than he had in months. "People are seeing through the Chambers' lies. It's still a long road ahead," I cautioned, not wanting either of us to become complacent. "But we're not walking it alone anymore," he pointed out. He was right. What had begun as a personal ordeal had somehow evolved into something larger, a stand against bullying, against the abuse of wealth and power, against the assumption that those with fewer resources should simply accept mistreatment. The pivotal moment came unexpectedly. 4 months after the canceled wedding, Jennifer Morris, Olivia's former maid of honor who had testified in our favor during depositions, gave an interview to a popular women's magazine. In it, she detailed her decade-long friendship with Olivia, including her growing concern about the Chambers family's influence. "Olivia wasn't always like this," she was quoted saying. "She used to be kind, genuine. But her parents, especially her father, raised her to believe that appearances and social standing were everything. That using people to get ahead was just being strategic. By the time she met Anthony, that mindset was deeply ingrained." Most damning was her revelation about a conversation she'd had with Olivia shortly after the engagement. She told me Anthony was perfect, not because she loved him, but because he checked all the boxes. Good family background despite his mother's working-class job, promising career, no embarrassing history. She talked about him like he was a merger, not a fiancé. The article included text messages Jennifer had saved, in which Olivia complained about having to play nice with me despite finding me painfully provincial, in one particularly revealing exchange. She wrote, "Dad says once we're married, we can limit contact with Nancy to holidays only. Anthony will be too busy with work to notice." The public response was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive of me and Anthony. Social media posts defending Olivia dwindled, replaced by expressions of sympathy for us and condemnation of the Chambers family's manipulation. Even more significantly, the magazine article caught the attention of a senior investigator at the Securities and Exchange Commission, who reached out to Sarah about the financial information that had emerged during our case. "They're reopening their investigation into Chambers' financial holdings," Sarah told me, barely containing her excitement. The documents Rachel Parker provided, combined with the depositions from other former employees, raised enough red flags to warrant a full review. This development seemed to break something in the Chambers camp. Their attorney requested an emergency meeting with Sarah and the judge, where he proposed a new settlement offer. They would not only drop their lawsuit against me, but would also issue a public apology and pay my legal fees. In exchange, they wanted our countersuit dismissed and our agreement not to cooperate with the SEC investigation. The judge, who had grown visibly irritated with the Chambers' delaying tactics, looked at their attorney over her reading glasses. "Let me be clear," she said. "You're asking Ms. White to potentially obstruct a federal investigation in exchange for dropping a lawsuit that, based on the evidence I've seen, has little merit to begin with." The attorney stammered a qualification, but the damage was done. The judge scheduled our case for trial the following month, denying any further motions for delay. "They're desperate," Sarah observed as we left the courthouse. "The SEC investigation is what they've feared all along, actual consequences for their financial manipulations." I should have felt triumphant. The Chambers family was finally facing real accountability, not just in our civil case, but potentially with federal regulators. Yet instead of satisfaction, I felt a strange melancholy. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, noticing my subdued mood. "This is a huge win for us." "I know," I said, struggling to articulate the feeling. "It's just, all of this started because I wanted to protect my son from someone who didn't truly love him. Somehow it's become this massive legal battle, this public spectacle. Sometimes I wonder if there could have been a simpler way." Sarah squeezed my arm gently. "Nancy, what the Chambers family did not just to you and Anthony, but to their employees, their investors. Anyone who got in their way, they did that. Not you. You're just the one who finally stood up to them." Her words were comforting, but the weight of the situation still pressed on me. That evening, I found myself flipping through the scrapbook again, lingering on photos of Anthony as a child innocent, trusting, his whole life ahead of him. Had I done the right thing, dragging us both into this public fight? Or would it have been better to walk away, to focus on healing privately? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Anthony. "Mom, have you seen the news?" he asked without preamble. "No. What's happened?" "Richard Chambers just resigned from his firm. There's a press release saying he's stepping down for personal reasons, but sources are saying it's because of the SEC investigation." I sat up straighter. "Already, but the investigation just reopened. Apparently, once word got out, major clients started pulling their investments. The board forced him out to try to salvage what's left of the company's reputation." The news should have felt like vindication, but instead, it underscored the human cost of this conflict. Richard Chambers was undoubtedly manipulative and dishonest, but he was also Olivia's father, a man whose entire identity had been built around his perceived success. "How do you feel about it?" I asked Anthony, curious about his perspective. He was quiet for a moment. "Relieved, I think. Not because I wanted to see him ruined, but because maybe now they'll stop attacking you. Stop dragging this out." "And Olivia," I ventured, knowing it was still a tender subject. "Have you heard anything about how she's taking this another pause?" "Lisa said she's moved out of her parents' house. Got an apartment downtown and a job at a different marketing firm. Smaller company. Entry-level position." "Starting over," I murmured. "Looks that way." His tone was neutral, but I could hear the complexity of emotions beneath it. Despite everything, he had loved her once. We talked a while longer, about his work, about the upcoming trial, about nothing in particular. Before hanging up, he said something that caught me by surprise. "You know, Mom, all those years it was just you and me against the world. You taught me that what matters isn't money or status or what other people think. It's integrity. It's doing the right thing even when it's hard." His voice softened. "I'm sorry I forgot that for a while with Olivia." "You fell in love," I said simply. "We all want to see the best in the people we love. Still, I should have seen how she treated you, should have stood up for you sooner." "You stood up when it mattered most," I assured him. "That's all any mother could ask." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, thinking about the journey we'd taken these past months. From the heartbreak of being told I wasn't family, to the vindication of the truth finally emerging. It had been painful, messy, exhausting, but perhaps necessary. Not just for me and Anthony, but for all the others the Chambers family had hurt, or would have hurt if their pattern of behavior had continued unchecked. 2 days before our scheduled trial date, Sarah called with news that rendered it moot. The Chambers' attorney had filed a motion to dismiss their own lawsuit, with prejudice, meaning they couldn't refile it later. Additionally, they had reached out with yet another settlement offer for our countersuit, a substantial financial payment, a public apology, and a commitment to professional counseling for Olivia. "They're surrendering," Sarah said, her voice reflecting my own disbelief. "Completely and unconditionally." Why now? I wondered. After fighting so hard for so long. The SEC investigation is gaining momentum. Richard's resignation didn't stop it. They're cutting their losses, trying to resolve at least one front of their legal battles. I considered the offer, particularly the counseling provision for Olivia. That suggested a level of self-awareness I hadn't expected from the Chambers family, an acknowledgement that the problem went deeper than just their financial schemes or their social ambitions. Let's accept, I decided. It's time for this to end. The settlement was finalized quietly, without the media fanfare that had accompanied earlier stages of our conflict. The Chambers family issued a brief public statement acknowledging that their claims against me had been unfounded and expressing regret for any distress caused. The financial payment, which I ultimately donated to a scholarship fund for single parents, was not disclosed publicly. Life began returning to normal, or perhaps a new normal. I returned to work at the hospital cafeteria, where colleagues who had once whispered behind my back now greeted me with newfound respect. Anthony's career at the law firm flourished. the shadow of scandal lifting as his abilities spoke for themselves. The most unexpected development came 6 months after the settlement, when I received a letter, an actual handwritten letter with a downtown return address I didn't recognize. The handwriting inside was elegant, feminine. "Dear Mrs. White," it began. "You don't owe me the courtesy of reading this, but I hope you will. My name is Olivia Chambers. Though I've recently begun using my mother's maiden name professionally to make a fresh start, I sat heavily on my couch, stunned to be hearing from her after all this time. I'm writing to apologize." The letter continued. "Not because my parents' settlement required it, but because I've spent the past 6 months in therapy confronting some difficult truths about myself and the values I was raised with." She went on to explain her upbringing, the constant pressure to project success, to marry advantageously, to prioritize appearances over authenticity. How her parents' financial instability had created a deep insecurity that she'd tried to solve through controlling others. "None of this excuses what I did to you and Anthony," she wrote. "The cruel words I spoke to you before the wedding, the lies I told afterward, they were inexcusable, and I am deeply ashamed." The letter expressed no expectation of forgiveness, no request to reestablish contact with Anthony, just an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and a commitment to change. "I will never again treat someone as disposable," she concluded. "You deserved better, as did Anthony. I'm working to become someone who adds value to others' lives rather than using them for my own purposes. I don't expect a response to this letter, but I wanted you to know that your courage in standing up to me and my family forced me to confront truths I might otherwise have avoided for years." I read the letter 3 times, my emotions shifting with each reading from suspicion to surprise to a cautious appreciation for what seemed like genuine remorse. Whether or not to share it with Anthony was a decision I would need to make carefully. In the end, I did show him, over dinner at my apartment the following Sunday. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. "Do you think she means it?" he asked finally, returning the letter to its envelope. "I think she might," I replied. "People can change when they're forced to confront the consequences of their actions." He nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad for her, if she's really getting help, but that chapter of our lives is closed." "Agreed," I said, relieved that he had no interest in rekindling any connection with Olivia, as we cleared the dinner dishes together, moving around my small kitchen with the comfortable familiarity of years. Anthony paused, leaning against the counter. "You know, all of this, the wedding disaster, the lawsuit, everything, it's been terrible in so many ways. But I think it's also made us stronger." He smiled, the warm, genuine smile I'd loved since he was a toddler. "We've always been a team, you and me. But now I understand just how lucky I am to have you as my mother." I reached up to touch his cheek, my heart full. "And I've always been lucky to have you as my son." Later that evening, after Anthony had left, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset, reflecting on the journey we'd traveled. From the desperate single mother stretching every dollar to the woman who had stood up to wealth and power and emerged victorious. From the son of an absent father to a man of integrity who chose truth over convenience. We had weathered this storm as we had all others together, and whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew with absolute certainty that our bond would remain unbroken. Some ties, after all, are too strong to be severed by mere words. Some relationships too deeply rooted to be uprooted by adversity. The Chambers family had never understood that had mistaken wealth for worth, appearance for substance. But I knew better. I had always known better. And in the end, that knowledge, that absolute certainty of what truly matters in life had been our greatest strength. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below.